Hey everyone. I have a long list of things which I need to announce to you today. So excuse me for reading. First of all, we'd like to welcome everybody. And I'm Amy Hanna. I am a Henderson County Master Gardener and also an administrator on the Hendersonville Gardening Facebook page, and I hope you're all members. I hope you check in with the Facebook page and find out what's going on in our community and our group. So welcome today. Our mission as a gardening group is to connect with people, share our knowledges and resources, and support one another through the joys of gardening, which I think we've been pretty successful at doing so far. It's been about 2 years that we've been meeting, and I think it's fair to say that we've all had a wonderful, wonderful journey so far. So thank you for joining us. Our mission as the gardening group is to connect with people, share knowledge and resources, and support each other through the joys of gardening, as I said. I'd like to introduce our library staff. Many of you come to the meetings often, but I'm not sure if you're aware of our library staff. So come on up here, Rachel. Come say hello to everyone. No, she's chewing. Come on, Anthony. Hi, Rachel. This is Anthony. Anthony is our Director of Library Services. He's the man behind the video camera. You'll see him at all of our meetings. And Rachel is still chewing. Hi, Rachel Quinn.
What I get for eating lunch.
Yeah, don't do that. But thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate you having us. We also want to make sure that you're aware of our seed library over there in the corner, where the floral arrangement is on the wall, is our seed library. We are in the midst of reorganizing it. We have a new seed cabinet coming, and lots of seeds are rolling in. Thank you all for bringing in seeds to support our seed library. Next month we're having our seed swap Lollapalooza, so we invite everybody to bring in as many seeds as you can from your own garden. We'll have other seeds supplemented from companies like So True Seed, Eden Brothers, High Mowing, as far as the vegetables go. But if you're anything like me, we have lots of flower seeds. And so next month we're going to have a seed exchange, which will be a lot of fun. It's going to be kind of loose, not quite as orchestrated as our normal meetings go, but lots of fun. We also wanted you to know, if you are a Henderson County resident, you could apply for a library card right here at our front desk, and that will entitle you to check out any books in our library, including this wonderful selection of gardening books that Anthony put together for you to choose from. Yes. Thank you, Alana.
Thanks, Vanna.
Yes, exactly. Great.
Just like Colin.
Good. And also, if you've never ventured out of this room, we have a wonderful little cafe for sodas, coffee, and a little snack right down the hall, and the restrooms are right down the hall as well. The bookstore is directly across the hallway, where they have some snacks as well, and you might want to check out their merch. So again, we also have a number of raffle prizes today on this table, and then there's a bouquet of flowers and lots to choose from over here. We'll talk about that more toward the end of the meeting, but our raffle prizes are always so overwhelmingly welcomed. This round table over here offers a huge selection of beautiful crafts by none other than our own Becky Bishop. She enjoys creating crafts, and she offers them as raffle prizes for our monthly meetings, which we are so appreciative for.
Amy, my neighbor planted a whole bunch of cabbage plants and left the trays out there in the field to break up in the sun, so there's 16 of those with 98 holes. Feel free to take however many you want.
That's awesome, Bill. And then, of course, we also have some beautiful basil that was harvested by Becky. Mary, what did you bring?
Sea oats.
Sea oats. Beautiful. Wonderful. They'll look great in a dried arrangement or green as well. So beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks, Mary. But before we kick things off, I just wanted to also point out that I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Repair Cafe, and that is being held here on Thursday night, this Thursday night. So anything that you have that needs to be repaired, whether it's a backpack or a pair of pants that need to be hemmed or a broken zipper, bring it here. What are the hours for that, Anthony?
4 to 7.
4 to 7 on Thursday. Thursday afternoon. And all the repairs are done free of charge by very good souls, I have to say. And also, as part of our continued support of random active flowers, we are accepting vases that could be used for random active flowers. They are a group of local people who assemble wonderful bouquets, and they deliver them to assisted living homes as well as hospitals and those in need. So underneath the seed library, you'll find a rack, and you can just put your vase there. They're kind of particular about the vases they want. They'd rather have them short, no wider than a 3-inch mouth opening. So jars are absolutely perfect. Just please bring them label free and without any sticky on them. That would be great. So, and now I'd like to introduce to you our speaker, Rachel Meriwether from the horticultural department here at Blue Ridge Community College. Rachel.
I feel like most of y'all already know me if y'all been in this garden club, because I have definitely given a talk before. For anybody that doesn't, I'm originally from the very deep south in Louisiana, have always been a plant nut, did my graduate school work specifically in plant propagation at Auburn University in Alabama, and then sort of migrated up here to get away from the heat and have never left because it is amazing up here and I love it. And I don't think I could ever live anywhere that's not a temperate forest anymore. I love living in a temperate forest. It's the most wonderful thing. So obviously we're talking about seed saving today, and I'm going to try and keep it pretty straightforward, but there's no way to talk about seed saving without doing some plant physiology, so there is some plant physiology in this talk as well. Interrupt me with questions as we go. I don't know that this group needs any convincing, but there are a lot of really good reasons to save seeds. Preserving varieties and biodiversity is a massive one, right? It is something that we are watching happen all the time, is loss of biodiversity, not just in our natural environments, but in our cultivated crops as well. This isn't necessarily a plant we're going to deal with in this group, but there is currently a big international brouhaha about bananas. Bananas are basically one species, maybe a couple others that are grown, and they're starting to see a little fruit fly and a couple other things. And if for some reason something happens, maybe we won't mind losing a couple of bananas for breakfast, but bananas basically support the economies of whole countries, right? And so you're talking about like Irish potato famine level stuff, right? So having biodiversity, not just in our natural environments, but in the foods we eat is massively important. And the things we eat in the grocery store, we eat like 12 vegetables and like 2 varieties of each of those, if that, right? And so as home gardeners or local bioregional food system enjoyers, we are actively a part of that biodiversity management, right? To buy a type of cabbage or to buy a bean that isn't something you can buy at Ingles, you are truly participating in a form of biodiversity management, right? It is a powerful thing, and there's a lot of really beautiful stories behind the vegetables and fruits and things that all of us enjoy, and they're a powerful part of who we are as an organism, right? Like our ability to function, it depends on their ability to function and vice versa in some ways. And so join the team, save seeds, right? Obviously you can save money. Seed can be pretty expensive, especially if you're talking about ornamentals. Vegetables, not quite as much, but if you're starting to get into some of the pretty flowers and stuff, you're starting to bump up into seeds that can be like 75 cents, $1 a piece, and that is really expensive, right? If you can save seed from those, fan-freaking-tastic, right? Self-reliance, I don't know about y'all, but I love being able to do stuff in my own space, right? I do want to be able to save seed on my own, and that is just a really good feeling. Anytime you are saving seed from a plant you have grown in your own garden, you are on some level contributing to its adaptability in a place, because you're saving, well, ideally you're saving whatever's the healthiest. I do find it interesting that no matter what you choose in your garden, you are sort of nudging a plant a direction. So if you're the kind of person who wants to pick the healthiest squash and the very first healthy squash you see, you are always just kind of selecting for early ripening squash. Just a little, always, right? If you are trying to maintain a variety very consistently, you would potentially choose varieties from the beginning, the middle, and the end. If you want it to stay like that, if what you want is an early ripening squash, always pick the first one that shows up. Always pick the one that ripens the fastest, because you're always kind of choosing that trait to that thing that came out when it was projecting itself out there as a plant. Maintaining heirlooms and favorite varieties, this is such a big one. I mean, like, to some extent the same as biodiversity, but there are some pretty decent seed companies now that are maintaining some of the plants that we think of as sort of cottage garden plants, things that our grandmothers had in gardens and things like that, but not every big seed company is doing that. And so maintaining those, again, becomes something that we are actively involved in. And then, of course, you can build a community with seed swaps. Okay, so again, little plant physiology to jump us off here. There are some plants that will self-pollinate, and there are some that need to cross out in order to get seeds. So a lot of the fruits in particular want to outcross. Who here grows blueberries? Nobody? A couple people? So if you grow blueberries, and the few that do, you almost always are supposed to have one separate variety blueberry. Right, so if you're growing all Tiff blue blueberries, you should ideally have at least 1 per 10 blueberry bushes that is a different variety of blueberry, because blueberries would prefer to outcross, right? Genetically speaking, that is preferred by any organism because there is hybrid vigor is a thing, right? And we want to outcross. A lot of the bigger fruit trees and stuff, same thing. They are not going to self-pollinate at all. They need to be cross-pollinated out. If some plants can self-pollinate, that in a lot of ways is what you want if you're a seed saver, if you're trying to save a specific variety, because you need them to come true to type. So anybody that can self-pollinate, they are going to come true to type. If a yellow patty pan crosses with a yellow patty pan, 99% of the time, unless there's some sort of genetic anomaly, we're getting a yellow patty pan. If you want to, on your own, develop new varieties, you can take a yellow patty pan and a green zucchini and cross those and see what happens. Because then you're gonna get, who knows, it's a genetic grab bag at that point, right? And that is then, we're jumping into like seed development as opposed to maintaining specific seed varieties. It's also important to understand annuals, biennials, and perennials, which I feel like this group feels pretty confident on. Y'all seem like the right group for that, right? So annuals, if you're gonna get into seed saving, annuals are a great one to start with because they are not shy about their seed production. Right? They have got to produce lots of seeds to continue their life because they die that year, right? Biennials, really challenging. Don't start with a biennial. Those are so hard, right? Anybody who's like, oh gosh, I really want to save kale seeds. I'm like, don't do that, right? Like, that means you have to keep a kale plant alive all winter long, all the way into springtime when it is going to finally flower in year 2, right? One of our famous biennials in the area is mullein. I personally love mullein plants. I think they're really beautiful. And so they start out as that fuzzy little rosette the first year. Second year, they turn into this massive monster and shoot up that beautiful yellow flower spike, and then they're done, right? So biennials are a 2-year, and then of course the perennials. Perennials, they can be relatively easy to like see the seed. They tend to make bigger seeds. The biggest challenge with perennials is a lot of times they don't have as high a germination percentage, right? It's not really as important to them to make lots and lots of seed that is will germinate because their body is alive, right? And some perennials, if it's a bad year, they just won't even make seed at all that year. They're like, physiologically, I'm not up for it. Not doing it this year. Yeah, no, it's a rough year. I'm not bothering right that, right? They don't have to make viable seed to stay alive. They are already alive. They have next year to try again. Whereas again, annuals, and they're busting out with it, right? Just like so much. Marigolds, this is a great one to start with saving seed. The seeds are huge and they make so many seeds so readily, right? Okay, so open pollinated versus hybrid. I always feel like I want to focus on this a little bit because I feel like there is a lot of confusion sometimes around these terms and what they can mean. So open pollinated is often synonymous with heirloom, right? A lot of times heirloom is more of a marketing term, that an heirloom plant didn't necessarily like come across the oceans on the Mayflower. It didn't get saved by whomever, right? Like some heirloom varieties that are listed as that were developed by somebody in Iowa in 1932, right? They get to be called heirloom because they are open pollinated. Open pollinated plants are stabilized plants that, like that patty pan I was talking about, if a patty pan crosses with a patty pan, they come true to type. That means they can be saved seed from. That doesn't mean that they won't outcross. That is not the same thing, right? If you have a patty pan crossed with something else intentionally, it won't come out true to type. But any open pollinated seeds that pollinates with one of its own type will come true to type, right? If you have a hybrid or an F1, who's ever seen F1 on a seed packet? They regularly in seed, I mean, especially, maybe not like a So True that's locally here, but if you get seed from Johnny's or somewhere like that, they have a fair number of F1 hybrids. And some of that is because hybrid vigor is important, right? Some hybrids are just really, really good, and they have traits that we really want, and they haven't been fully stabilized yet. An F1 generation is a plant that has two different parents, right? So if I have a German Giant and a Mr. Stripey tomato, and I cross those two, and I end up with a Mr. Stripey, that Mr. Stripey, I cannot breed two Mr. Stripeys together. If I do that, I will again get a genetic grab bag, because nothing is stabilized at that point. If you want a Mr. Stripey, you always have to start with your German Giant and your, what did I call it? Mr. Stripey, yeah. You have to start with those two parents, whatever it is, right? Some of that stuff is crazy proprietary, right? There are some hybrids that nobody knows who the parents are, because that is not what the seed company is going to tell you, because they want you to get your seed from them, right? They want you to buy it from them. It's possibly even patented, all of that kind of thing, right? That is a challenge with any F1, and part of why sometimes seeds even end up in the news, because if a farmer is dependent on an F1 variety, they will always have to buy their seed year after year. They can never save seed from that crop. Even if they do, and it's not patented, again, they're not going to come true to type. Maybe some of them will, but 90% of them are just going to be whatever. They might not even be viable. Quite often, F1 hybrids don't actually make viable seed, right? There are hybrids that are famous. This is outside plants. But mules are a real famous hybrid in animals. A mule is always a donkey and a horse, and mules can't have babies. They just are not, it didn't develop right? Things just didn't happen like they're supposed to. So that is a really important part of understanding seed saving. If you raise something as an F1 and you save seed from it, you can do that if you're an experimenter. Just know you're not going to get a Mr. Stripey. You're going to get a who knows what along the way. When you are dealing with plants, there's also monoecious and dioecious plants. If you're trying to do seed saving and things like that, and you're going to do some crossing. The way I always get my students to remember this, in Latin this means one house. This means two houses. Monoecious plants have both male and female flower parts on one plant. One house for males and females. If you're a dioecious plant, you have males and females. Squashes quite commonly are dioecious, right? Or I'm sorry, monoecious, and then you've got male and female plants on the same plant. Like if you go and look at your squash blossoms, some of them will have these long, thin stalks leading to the flower, and there's no bulb at the bottom. Those will never make squash because those are the male flowers. And then other ones have shorter stalks, and then they've got, even before they get pollinated, they've got a little bulb at the bottom, which is the incipient ovary, right? It is waiting to be pollinated, and that is your female flower. A lot of our fruits, again, can be dioecious, where they're like, everybody's on there, but they aren't going to self-pollinate, all sorts. So this is important if and when you are going to do some of your own crossing and want to understand how to get things not to cross each other, all of that kind of things we'll talk a little bit more about as we get to seed saving. Genetic stability, this, well, maybe I'll get into this a little more again when we talk about how you like separate seeds in time, because if you want to save a particular variety, you have to keep it separate from things that are going to cross-pollinate it, right? So again, if you want yellow patty pans, but you're also growing green zucchini, if you have them in the same garden blooming at the same time and you save seeds from a squash, you are not guaranteeing that that thing is not cross-pollinated, right? It might have outcrossed, and again, you have to do things to sort of force that on nature and say, you can't pollinate with anybody else, you got to pollinate with only these. Okay, any questions about the sciencey plant physiology part of this talk? Yeah, right
Is
here.
there also an F2
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
F3?
And F3 and on. And by the time you get to like, God, it's been a while since I had to, it kind of depends on the plant, but by the time you're getting into sort of like F7s and 10s and stuff like that, that's where you're starting to get into stabilized generations.
Okay.
Because that's essentially how you stabilize a plant, is if you have those Mr. Stripeys, you go ahead and cross Mr. Stripeys, and then every time you get a Mr. Stripey that looks like it should, then you cross those, and then you cross those, and then we're finally down to F7, and we're starting to get nothing but Mr. Stripeys.
Okay, so
Because-
I've seen F3s.
Yeah. Sure. And that's basically what it is you've taken F1 plants, you've bred them with each other, and now we're in F2. And we breed them, and now we get to F3. So you're not often going to see that in a seed catalog. If you're seeing that, I feel like you're probably talking to somebody that's doing seed saving.
Yeah, I used to work in the seed bank.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That
some of our
is,
seeds were more.
yeah, where you need to know. It's like, we've already crossed all these, so now hopefully we're seeing more of what we want. Okay, now we're in 3, now we're hopefully seeing even more of what we actually want. So once you're getting into those level generations, again, that's somebody who's actively developing a variety. Yeah, and seeing what's gonna happen. Any other questions about this?
Question.
Yeah.
If you have a patch of common milkweed and a patch of purple milkweed, for example, and the wasp and whomever the big pollinators
Sure.
are cross-pollinate, but they make the next
Honestly,
generation.
don't know how readily milkweeds cross-pollinate. Does anybody, I can easily ask in a classroom now for somebody to fact check me, because students always have a laptop with them. I was like, somebody fact check me. Oh, wait, that's not this crowd. So it is somewhat dependent on type of plant, right? I use squash as an example because squash are notoriously willing to cross-pollinate, right? They don't care. All pollen welcome. Whereas some other plants, they are going to be very resistant to outcrossing. They're going to wait for pollen. And pollens, has anybody ever seen photos of pollen under magnification? It's beautiful. Each of them is like, they're all shaped different, and it's like a key. And then the stigma, that's the female part of the flower, it's like a lock. And so if pollen from something this lock won't fit lands there, it just doesn't do anything, right? But if pollen that fits the lock, and then all the genetic cascade happens, and suddenly you've got seeds, right? And so some of them have tighter locks than others, maybe if you want to think of it like that. And I don't know about milkweed, I'd have to check that. Yeah, yeah. Anybody else? Okay, moving right along. Choosing what to save. Please start easy. If you have not saved seed yet, start with the easy ones, because it can get pretty complicated. And again, some of them need more effort in terms of spatial separation or time separation, or are they stabilized, are they not? Any of your beans, peas, lettuce, tomatoes, marigolds, so easy to save, right? Especially if you don't really care in a lot of ways, like if they are fully crossing, like with my zinnias, I don't care if my zinnias cross. If anything, I hope they do, right? I hope I end up with something with yellow spots on pink petals. That would be incredible. If you want them to stay true, again, we'll talk about that more in just a second, but for plants that I don't really care if they outcross, that's the best thing ever, right? Is you just let them do their thing, and then at the end of the season, you go out there and collect some seeds, and then you put them back out in the garden when you're done. And fantastic. Cosmos, I find to be really relatively straightforward. These are challenging only because corn, you need massive separation distances. It is really hard to do isolation with corn. Squash, again, challenging to keep them separate. It's not very hard to save seed from them. It is really hard to have them not cross each other, because even if you only have one type of squash in your garden, $20 says your neighbor has a different one. Right? And so everywhere a bee is flying, there's squash. They are happily spreading things. So unless you and your neighbors are all figuring this out together, or again, you're like doing some hand pollinating and then using little baggies, which again, we're gonna talk about in a second, then again, who knows, right? What those bees are bringing to your squash plants. Again, brassicas, please do not try brassicas right off. That is, I feel like I should bump this one into here, actually. That is so much harder. Sunflowers, why do I have that one in that category? Maybe because they're crossing again. Well, challenge with sunflowers, honestly, for me, is keeping the birds away from them. Like in time for them to get fully ripe. That's rough. Perennials, that we're going to talk about when we get to seed treatments. How do you get seeds to germinate? Perennials can be pretty challenging because a lot of them need special things to get them to germinate that seed companies have done for you and things like that. And they're very tiny. Okay. Okay, so making it to preventing cross-pollination. There are a lot of ways that you can do this. You can do it by distance. Some plants need 1,000 feet. They need to be a mile apart, right? Corn is wind pollinated. So if you truly want your corn not to cross-pollinate, I actually in grad school helped with another grad student's research project, and one of the things we had to do is collect pollen and then put it in these little paper baggies and then take the corn silk and put it in the baggie and shake it so that it pollinated, and then you'd have to flip it back up, and every single corn you're going to save seed from had to get a baggie over its head so nothing else would blow in. It was so time consuming. It was in Alabama. It was so hot. It was just a miserable job. Lettuces, their pollen doesn't go very far. They're pollinated by little tiny creatures, things like that. So all of them are going to have different requirements. We'll talk about books in a second. So you can spatially separate things. That is one way you can do it. You also can do it in time. So let's say I want to save squash from my yellow patty pans. Well, I can plant yellow patty pan first thing in the season. Wait till everything is pollinated. Know that I'm going to save seed from this particular squash. I've marked it. Everything's good to go. Now I can go ahead and put my green zucchini in, because now they aren't going to pollinate in ways that I'm going to worry about because flowers aren't available at the same time, right? Then you can, of course, exclude insects. All sorts of ways, from like full-on professional tents. This is probably like a seed farm, right, that is excluding insects from getting in there and not letting pollen get out via wind. You can have little individual baggies, or I love to save anytime anybody gives me jewelry, those little organza bags, amazing for this, right? It still lets it breathe. The little thing doesn't tightens, but doesn't not spread. Just amazing, right? That is one of my favorite things to use to seed save little ones. So when you're doing any sort of hand pollinating, let's say that this is the tomato I want to save seed from for whatever reason, I will either self-cross it because I want it always to stay my Cherokee purple or whatever it's going to be, or if I'm going to practice and I want to try to develop new varieties, I'll go get a flower from whatever weird one I want to cross it with. I do my little hand pollination, and then I put this baggie on it so nothing else can pollinate it, right? I've now marked it, I know what it is, and definitely write on there what it is. I always think I'm going to remember. This is my profession. I never remember. Never remember, right? Who was the parent? Where did this one come from? What day did I do this? Like, what in the world? Why? What was the weather like that day? Like, there's so much information I want that I think my brain is going to hold on to, and it doesn't, right? Remember to write everything down. So yes, please label things. It is so frustrating at the end of the season, or to come back to whatever you were doing and you've just got no recollection of what it was. I don't know about y'all, but the seeds that I sometimes have in my freezer, I'm like, what is that? Like, I mean, maybe if it's a certain shape or color, fine, but like sometimes I have no idea. I'm just like, well, this is a surprise. I guess we'll see what's in there. Yeah. Okay.
Bag just that says mystery seed.
Mystery seed. Yeah. What is this? I have no idea. I actually have a mystery seed bag in my office right now because we were doing fall veggies with my veggie class, and a bunch of seed got spilled. So now it's like a mix of lettuces and who knows what. It's like, we're just gonna put this out with the cover crop, I guess, in about a couple of weeks, and who knows? Yeah, we'll see. Okay, any other questions about this? Okay. So there are two really big categories of seed saving. There's dry fruits and there are wet fruits. They take really different things. I personally think that wet is easier. It takes a little more effort in your house, but the challenge I really find with a lot of dry seed is, one, the rain, which I cannot predict when it's getting here, and the birds, right? Unless you're gonna baggie everything you wanna save. I mean, some of the seeds I brought in, so these are Tithonia from my house. These are Echinacea from our nursery pad here at school. And I had trouble actually finding some of the Echinacea pods that still were fully seeded because the goldfinches are just like annihilating these right now. And I'm not gonna stop them. Obviously they can do what they want. Same thing with my sunflowers. Like, unless I go out there with a full baggie and cover the sunflowers, the goldfinches are so fast at it, and they don't care if they're fully ripe. So while I'm waiting patiently for dry seed to dry down as dry as it has to go, they are already feasting like maniacs, right? As is every other creature out there, because seeds are the most wonderful thing, including us, right? It's just like all the nutrition a baby plant needs in a little package. Everything wants it. It's delicious, yeah. So with dry seed, I think the other challenge can sometimes be waiting long enough, right? If you haven't ever saved seed before, you feel like something's ready, but it's not. Like these two marigolds, this one is not quite ready. Well, it's getting close. This one I can feel with my fingers how dry it is. This one is not quite. Even if they look, and I'm gonna set these out for you guys to come look at. Even if it can visually sometimes look like it's ready, that is not the same thing as that plant having put as much energy into that seed as it needs to make a fully developed embryo and endosperm in that seed to make it viable on the other end of everything, right? They can look like they're ready. This one is 100%. I can't even break it with my fingers, right? So if I were to peel this open, even though these are turning black, these are not ready. They bend in my fingers, they're soft, absolutely not ready yet, right? It can seem like it is, and they can even all be on the same pods, right? So like, these are heading towards ready. These are not ready at all. This one hasn't even busted open yet. This is what it's gotta look like when it's done, right? Same with the ones Amy brought. That is ready. If someone eats that before you have time, unless you're bagging it, I find that the hardest thing with dry seed is you have to wait and wait and wait. This is actually one that I think is a failed experiment from our department. This is crimson clover that we were using as a cover crop in the garden. And we really needed the garden space for something different, but we really were hoping we can save seed from it. So we harvest as much as we could. And when I flip through all of these and like peel open individual little casings, I don't find almost any fully developed clover seed. So I think this one is exactly that. Like we just couldn't wait yet. It like just breaks apart in my finger. And it would feel hard like a seed if it were ready. So patience. Okras, even worse. You have to wait so long, right? Like this thing, it's so dry. And you just have to wait longer than it seems like. Yeah, Mary.
Does it have to stay on the plant until it's ready, or can you?
Not necessarily. That's a great question. So if they are starting to fully senesce on the stem, at that point you absolutely could take them off because the plant has now cut off the plumbing, right? The plant is no longer sending nutrition in here to develop that endosperm. If it still has an active stem, this plant still has plumbing running, right? It is still actively sending nutrition out here to get this seed as nutritious as it possibly can be, because a seed is a baby plant in a box with its lunch. And if that little baby plant doesn't develop enough or its lunch isn't big enough, it will not work on the back end, right? So, kind of depends, which is the worst answer every horticulturalist gives for everything. But sometimes, yeah, sometimes. With a lot of the really tiny seeded stuff, I'll often remove it from the plant and then put it in a paper bag and hang it upside down. Because once some of, like if you want to save something like Joe Pieweed, once these things decide to go poof, that's it, right? They're gone. They're not. So if I wanted to save this, which this one's still a little early for me, I bet some of these up here are fully ready because you can see if you get closer that this stem is fully senesced. This is still growing, so I'd just be giving up these, I suppose. But you gotta get them before they fully poof, right? If they fully poof, gone, whatever. Red lobelia, I love red lobelia, always have. You have to get those before the pods open. If the pods open, then they're gone. They scatter. Columbine, same thing. Really cool little seed pods. The second they pop, they like physically eject their seeds, right? So sometimes you need to take them off the plant. And then you hang them upside down somewhere really, really dry and wait for them to dry down all the way. Yeah. Excellent question. Let's see. Any other questions? Oh, damp ones. Okay, so I get to blame my dogs for something. I actually had fermented some tomato seeds from y'all, and my dog knocked it off the counter last night. He's a huge dog, and he had his nose up to see what I was doing and hit the thing. So I did bring y'all some, but it's not fully fermented. So who here has ever fermented tomato seeds to get seeds from them? Nice, we got one, a few. I don't know about y'all, but all I do, because I am not a professional seed organization, is these I did this morning. I went and found a tomato out of my garden, dumped it in here. I will add a little bit of water, and then I leave this on my counter, very technically, for like 48 hours or until I remember, right? It'll develop this perfectly white, fuzzy mold on top. And that mold is fermenting everything underneath and breaks down that goo that is around tomato seeds, right? It is impossible to get that goo off of tomato seeds unless you have professional equipment without doing this. And even professional equipment does this, right? So you let it ferment down, and then I use some more very technical equipment that I bought at the thrift store. And once it has fully fermented, I'll sort of like swirl it around either with my fingers or a whisk, depending on my mood. And then I dump it through, and I'll use my hand to squish, 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 squish. I'll get all the goo out, and then I am left with seeds. I'll kind of rinse it under the sink a little bit. I spread them out on a paper towel, and I let them dry.
Will it not propagate through the goo?
It will, they do not store as well. The goo is like, so tomatoes are native to more warm tropical regions, so they kind of have like fertilizer water around them, so they're meant to just drop and germinate immediately. If what we want to do is hold them in a fridge, all of that, you're basically setting it up to mold. Yeah, they're just not going to really dry down right, and so it's better to remove the goo. Yeah. So dried seed saving, I just find it a little less, I don't have to be as patient. I don't have to be as diligent about not letting birds get them. It requires a little more, like, again, effort in my house, but I just find it, I have to be less patient, and patience is a struggle for me.
How do you know when the seeds are ready in the tomato? The tomato has to be really ripe?
Yeah, really ripe.
Really ripe.
Right, and not even like nice when we would, where it's still kind of firm where you would eat it. Like this one was heading towards being non-edible, right? Kind of soft,
Do you
gushy.
left it outside, or do you pick it when it's still a little bit green and bring it in and let it finish right?
I mean, it depends again on the predators for me, right? Like what's out there eating them. Because every now and then the crows, I feel like, discover my tomato patch. And I'm not gonna keep them out of there once they, or the raccoons, I feel like the raccoons every now and then found them too, and they'll eat half of every tomato down the row.
You can still save those seeds, though.
Yeah, you can still save those. Again, the caution against harvesting a tomato kind of green and setting it on your windowsill is that tomato flesh is still ripening, but there's nothing else coming in, and so your seeds are potentially not developing quite as well. They can, because they're pulling from some of the energy that's already in that fruit, but ideally you're letting them stay on that plant as long as possible so that that embryo and most importantly the endosperm, which is the plant's lunch, is developing properly. Yeah. Anything that stays kind of wet, I feel like cucumbers and peppers to me, yeah, they're considered this category because you don't usually leave peppers on the vine until they're fully dry, so you are harvesting them as like a wet plant. You don't have to do this same gooey step with peppers, right? With them, you just got to get them out. You do need to let them dry down though, right? So those, kind of like you're asking Mary, it's like you can't just harvest them and put them straight into storage. You need to take even pepper seeds, put them on a paper towel, anything else that feels reasonable for them to dry on. And the thumbnail test is a good, reasonable home test, right? If you can still bend it or pierce it with your fingernail, it is still too wet. It is not dried completely. Like professional seed companies, they have like moisture meters and they are checking for seeds to be 30% moisture or below. For us, use your thumbnail, right? If it's that, I mean, even beans, when you first harvest dry beans, I feel like you can still get them to bend a little bit. If you leave them on your countertop for a week or two, by then they feel like concrete, right? It just doesn't even move at all, and they are fully dried down at that point. And then they're ready for storage. Yeah.
Cucumbers, got those long cucumbers, and I wanted to save seeds, but I'm like, those are really wet, like when? So now some of them are gonna turn yellow, and I'm like, I have no idea when to.
So if they're yellow, go ahead.
Okay.
Right? They have done as much as they're going to do, and they are about to drop that seed. Like if you think about the plant and what it's trying to accomplish, which is self-propagation, it's about ready to drop that fruit and let those germinate wherever they're going to go, right? It is ready to separate it from the mom, and off you go. Almost any of the things that we want to save seed from that are in this category, squashes, cucumbers, peppers, you do not harvest it at the same time you eat it. Right? Like anything you were harvesting to eat is probably not ready for seed saving, right? That squash or zucchini you forgot about while you were out of town and is now huge, leave that for seed saving, right? Again, if you've only got yellow patty pan, it's already doing what it's gonna do, right? It is well past when you can eat it, and so let it continue developing. Save seed from that one, see what happens. We used to love to save whatever squash came along because, again, you get the weirdest stuff. Because we would have gourds and squash and everything in the garden. So by the time you get these, you suddenly have these like dino gourd things, you know, that'll be trombone shaped and they're kind of yellow, but then they've got stripes and just like, I love the variety that comes from squashes crossing randomly in the garden. Just really fun. Okay, any other questions about this? You can find any of these kind of charts, this one comes from this old house, on the internet. I feel like this is a reasonable thing to ask the internet about, and it's gonna give you a pretty reasonable answer, right? Show me the basics of saving wet seed, show me the basics of saving dry seed. And we'll talk about some of my books in just a second as well, because there's some pretty good books out there about seed saving. Okay, moving right along. Just some of your ornamentals, and I do have a few of these. I feel like zinnias sometimes, the thing that can be confusing about them is where the seeds themselves are. So zinnias, like sunflowers, are a compound flower. So not this isn't just one flower, right? There are like 27 flowers on here that go around the edges. On a sunflower, why you have so many seeds on one sunflower head is because every single one of those little black dots, if you look close at a sunflower head, is a flower, right? Teeny, teeny, tiny ones. So if you peel apart a zinnia, you've got to actually get down to the ones that are really seeds. And they're almost always at the bases of the petals. So these are the petals. Again, I know that it's hard to see in the back, and y'all can come closer. But if this top part's the petal, if I come down to the bottom, this is the zinnia seed. And it's kind of attached because it's ready to go. And that is what I'm actually after right there. They look like little arrowheads. Again, this one's pretty good. It's actually pretty hard. I can't bend it with my fingers anymore. Again, I'm happy to show you all this once y'all are up and walking around a little bit. Let's see. I think I'm going to talk about the next one. Anything that has capsules, pods, I already kind of mentioned this. Those, I for a little while worked for the Chicago Botanic Garden on a project that was seed saving. Even when we were doing this as a job, you have to bag those things because they have physiological means to explode their seed out of the capsules and pods and stuff like that. So you have to get there before they're fully ripe and put a baggie around it, put some sort of, our favorite were paper lunch bags, right? Like a paper lunch bag with a zip tie around it. Absolutely incredible. It stays relatively dry. I mean, obviously it can't get rained on. Organza bags don't work quite as well for this, but you have to bag anything with a capsule or pod. Otherwise you're gonna regret it, right? They're gonna explode and you're gonna think you waited long enough. If you were trying to save wildflower seed, I again think this is pretty challenging because you have to wait a really long time and they turn into teeny tiny dust and go poof, right? You always have to wait so long for them. So again, Joe Pieweed's kind of the one I could harvest this morning. And I do think some of these at the top, yeah. So they're at the base of the fuzz. That's the seed right there. God, I know, I'm so sorry. Y'all are so far from me. I keep saying, look, at the tiny fuzz in my palm. I can see one right there. He's got his little fuzzy hat on, and then the teeny tiny seed is under his little fuzzy hat, right? Because he's about ready to get taken by the winds to go out into the big bad world and go do whatever he's gonna do as a seed. So again, you've either gotta bag them or you've gotta be checking on the regular and be okay with like popping this bit off, letting it dry in your house. Oh, can't believe I skipped these when I was talking about pods. Everybody's familiar with who this is, right? Yes. So as soon as one of these pops open, obviously they're just, ready to go. And so again, you've got to bag these before they open, because once they open, a good stiff wind and you've suddenly lost, I don't know, 50 to 70% of all the seeds that you have in your pretty little milkweed pod right there. Can be pretty challenging. I've got another variety here in a little baggie that isn't sealed, so that's not very helpful. Let's see, anything else I wanted to say on here? I really like saving ornamentals, like I said, because the seed tends to be expensive. I find that ornamental seed is always more expensive than veggie seeds. Yeah.
So I've dried zinnia seeds, but I deadhead them, and then I take the head and I let it dry, and then I take out the seeds like you were doing there and let them dry again. But they never truly produce hardy flowers.
So my assumption would be is that because you're deadheading,
yeah,
you are taking them off as soon as they start to not look good,
yeah,
but they are not fully dry.
Okay, so
right.
leave some on to just.
You've got to leave them for so much longer than you think, right? You've got to, I mean, if you ever go to a seed farm, it does not look like what you would, like there aren't flowers all over there. There's a lot of dead stuff because everything has to go to the point of fully senescing and making seeds, right? So, I mean, like when I'm not saving seed from zinnias, I'm out there as soon as they start to really brown because I want them to immediately start putting energy into all those other meristems and putting up side shoots, right? I'm not trying to leave them there long enough. And physiologically speaking, if you I mean, that's the reason we deadhead. If you let plants go to seed, they are sending out physiological messages that are like, mission accomplished, super, no need to make any more flowers, we did it, yay team, right? And so they stop doing all this nonsense. So if you leave your zinnia heads on there to dry down all the way, your zinnia's like, well good, I'm done. I don't have to do this anymore. So deadheading and seed saving are definitely two different things, right? Two different goals going on. I mean, you could maybe toe the line a little, but I think what you're gonna get is mixed results in both directions, right? You're gonna get not quite as viable seed, and you're kind of missing the mark on getting your zinnias to fully bloom out on side shoots.
Got it, thanks.
But if we wait until, like, if we deadhead at the beginning of the season, and then, like, right now, I was trying to let mine go to
Yeah.
seed now.
I'm about the same. Yeah, I deadhead for the first month or two, and then now I'm letting them do their thing, right? They're about done. Everybody's got powdery mildew. So, yeah, I'm gonna save whatever seed I can get off it. But bear in mind again, what I'm selecting for is late blooms. Just a little bit, just nudging it, tiny bit, always by what you pick, right? Just a tiny bit. Okay, anyway, yeah, right here.
I put in some Little Joe Pyrene
Oh,
this
yeah, yeah.
year, and my God, it's a pollinator powerhouse.
Definitely.
And I'd love to say, I've never saved seeds before, but since it's Little Joe, that's a variety, right? Or is it a cultivar? And
Yeah.
does that mean that I can't?
I honestly don't know the answer to the question. I would have to check. That's a really good question though, because a lot of times hybrids like that won't really make great seed, right? We have a threadleaf ironweed that's a miniature bush version up at the greenhouse, and we've tried 2 years now to save seed from it, and we never get germination off of it. I don't know if we just haven't discovered what its seeds need to germinate, which is I think my next slide is like things you have to do to seed to get them to germinate, or does it just not make viable seed? Again, it's a horticultural variety, maybe not. A lot of the like really bushy flower types they have these days, you know, like we have a lot of echinaceas and dahlias that are the multi-petaled varieties. They're like triple petal, double petaled. They don't make seeds because they don't actually make like a real flower anymore. It's nothing but petals. And so there's not anything in there to pollinate, which is some of the argument people make about native plants. Because if you're a plant that doesn't make a flower, that means you're not making pollen, which means you don't have any food for pollinators. You're just like a restaurant with a sign, but no food, right? And there's nothing happening when you get to the restaurant. You're like, what a tease. Yeah. Same reason they don't make seed. Because if they don't have a flower that's an active, like, you need actual pollen and ovaries. If those things aren't there, then, so, honestly, I'd have to double check on Little Joe. I don't know about that one. But we like that one too. We sell it in our plant sale because it still does all the things we want Joe Pyeweed to do, but it behaves itself and doesn't get 15 feet tall. Yeah. Which it's got to be doing something, because we see pollinators on it too. So it has to at least be making pollen. Maybe it just doesn't make viable seed. Nobody has a laptop. Somebody fact check me. Both a benefit and a challenge of being a teacher in this era. Okay, any other questions about these ornamentals? We keep going. Awesome, okay. Okay, cleaning and processing. So I imagine, again, maybe in this crowd, we've heard the word winnowing. Everybody heard that word? What I mean? So, right, winnowing is just, yeah, exactly, Anthony. It's tossing something up in the air and the wind blows through it and takes away the lightweight stuff and you get the heavy stuff, right? There are very traditional ways of doing this, right? And you do it in the wind. There are really homemade ways to do this by pouring things in front of a fan. All sorts of ways you can do this. And then there are all sorts of machines. Both of these machines are things you can look up plans for on the internet. That if you want to save your own seed and process it down, you can just look these up and put this together yourself. This one, it's got a big fan here. You pour the seed through the hopper, and then you change the speed of the fan, and so the fan's blowing through, blowing the chaff away, and the seed drops down in this perfect little curtain into your collection bin. So you adjust things based on the weight of the seed dropping, right? Is it rice? Is it beans? Is it something else? And then the wind's blowing it through. This will work on an opposite principle. This is the vacuum. So you're pouring the thing you want down this wee chamber, so the heavy stuff goes down, and there's an opening that this guy's elbow is blocking, and the vacuum sucks it this way, and so the chaff that's lightweight drops down here, and the heavy stuff drops down here. So that's all winnowing is involved in, is heavy stuff over here, lightweight stuff over here, heavy stuff over here, lightweight over here. All sorts of ways you can do that. That being said, you don't always have to separate seed, right? Another cover crop we've been saving, because we're doing a fair amount of cover cropping up in our program, is tillage radish or daikon radish. These, I think we were very successful with. When I pop these open, I'm almost always, yeah, that one's got a bunch. Finding, this is what I'm really after, right? Little radish seeds, just like you get in a package. I'm not a seed seller. I don't need to waste my time getting them out of here. Not to mention, this is some biomass, this little seed cover. So we have a whole box of this in our department. When we go to cover crop this, we are just gonna take this and drop it directly into the field, right? I don't have to separate this because I'm not selling this. I don't need it to be in a package, I don't care. No interest whatsoever in figuring that out. It's dried down great, it's gonna work just fine. If you aren't saving it long-term and you don't need to put it in a package because you're selling your seed, you don't always have to separate it, right? Who cares? Just put it right back out there. If you want it nice and clean, by all means, do your thing. And you can get, but I'm not gonna make my students sit there and do this and extract every single one of these little radish seeds out of there. Unnecessary. Yeah.
I kind of do that with the zinnias and the dandelions and some of the other stuff. Like I just take the dried seed heads,
Absolutely.
not try to like just put them in a bag, let them dry, and then the next spring, then I just crunch them up and just throw them
Same.
in the bag.
Especially if I'm doing just year over year.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to save it 10 years from now.
Right.
Same. I am not going to separate out these zinnia heads. Absolutely not. I'm going to put them in a baggie. Or my favorite for things I get in bulk like this are the plastic tubs from Kilwins. Kilwins gives away their plastic tubs for free. And they are food grade and they have snap tops that stay really, really dry. And I get a whole bunch of those. And again, they sit somewhere relatively dry in a corner until next year. And then exact same thing. I just sort of shred them with my hands and throw them out wherever they're going to go. Same, especially if you don't want something in a row, right? If you want something in a row, maybe you need individual seeds. But if I'm just doing wildflower patches or this kind of thing, whatever. Yeah, I got way too much on my plate. There is no way I am wasting my time with this, right? Again, if you want to, by all means, you know? I'm not gonna, if you have engineering skills and you want perfectly clean seed, by all means. And if you're doing it for a seed library, then you do kind of have to try and do this sort of thing, just a little bit, right? Seed libraries don't want you to bring this. They would really prefer you to bring a little baggie with separated seed, right? So if you're doing seed libraries, know that comes with it a little bit too. Again, labeling, all that sort of stuff becomes very, very important. Yeah. Okay, let's see. I think I already actually covered most of the other stuff. A lot of sieves. I mean, I just brought the 3 that were nearest the door. I love sieves from thrift stores. It is my favorite place to get any of this kind of thing. And again, they have professional ones, right? If you really want to go out there and buy the little boxes that you can even stack that are different size screen all the way down, perfectly measured, so you can get different stuff all the way down. Again, I'm not going to yuck your yum, like do whatever feels good to you. I don't have time for that. I have 50 cents to spend at a thrift store, and this works just fine, right? Yeah, this is my world. Okay, let's see, fermenting, we talked about that. Again, drying down completely is important. If you want to use moisture meters, fine. Again, for my home stuff, I'm just using my fingernail. But you are going to have to dry it down a little bit, even if you're harvesting something that's dried in the field. I mean, maybe these by now, they're so dry, I bet if I pulled out a seed. But you can tell it's to that point. Oh yeah, this feels like a rock. I can't get my thumbnail in there, right? This is fully sealed up and ready to go. Okay, moving right along. Drying and storing seeds, drying thoroughly, yep. Okay, okay, this is my speed as far as seed storing containers. I will put them in anything that is sealable and keeps moisture out. Prescription bottles, random spice jars, any kind of glass jar. If you're doing any type of long-term storage, it needs to be water sealed, right? So paper does not work if you are going to be trying to save seed for long term in like a freezer or refrigerator or something like that, because as soon as you take it out of the freezer or the refrigerator, it immediately condensates and you have moisture on that. So I mean, like, it's fine, I guess, if you're going to use all the seeds, but if you're going to like open a container, take some of them out, close it back up and put it back in the freezer, you just contaminated that with water, if you want to think of it like that, right? You need them to stay dry. Wet stored cold seeds is an entirely different thing that we're going to talk about on the next slide. So dry storage that is also chilly is the best way to store seeds. My favorite is canning jars, again, from thrift stores, right? They're so cheap nowadays at thrift stores. Just get those, really great way. Just make sure you label it. Because again, you have the mystery seed in there. It's like, I don't know what that is. Yeah.
How cold? Refrigerator, freezer?
Refrigerator's fine, especially for just standard seed saving. Freezer is going to be ideal. Yeah. It's just, again, a little harder to make sure you don't get any condensation when you take them out. So like, for things that I am saving multiple years, I will pull the jar out 24 or 48 hours in advance so that it comes to room temperature before I open it. Because if you open it and all that cold stuff is in there, it immediately pulls moisture into there and you kind of ruined all this work you put into drying it down. Yeah. Let's see, again, anything, especially if you're doing like a seed library storage and you're using your seeds year over year, paper is great, right? Obviously that's what seed companies use. It's relatively cheap. You can write on it, all of that. So like for standard year over year, absolutely use paper. And remember to label everything. It's very important. Does anybody know what this place is? I just always throw this in for a little fun.
Way up near the North Pole.
Yeah, so this is the Svalbard Seed Vault. It is owned by the government of Norway and then administered kind of through a couple other different nonprofits. But it is a repository of every type of seed on the planet. That is the goal. Vegetables, wild seeds, everything. Doesn't matter what it is. Anybody can send these. Countries have sections, right, where it's all numbered out. It is in Svalbard, which is an island up above the Arctic Circle, because you don't have to electrically cool it as much, right? Because you want it freezing. We basically got a freezing seed ball. This is the door. I want to go so bad. You can't just go. You have to like sign up, right? Only so many people get to go. I want to go so bad. This is its door, but most of it's underground, where it just stays cold all the time, so that they can maintain a seed library in the event that for some reason we managed to kill plant life on this planet. You would have a backup storage of seeds on this planet. So just a little bit of fun, right? Svalbard Seed Library. Some people call it the Doomsday Vault. That's its other little like popular name. Okay, so testing seed viability. It seems simple, but the paper towel test remains the best test ever, right? Paper towels are perfect for germinating seeds. So if you want to do germinating seed tests, you lay them out on a paper towel and not like waste your time. Because I know I have definitely wasted my time with some seed that was not viable, where I planted a whole patch or I did like 3 trays of it and just nothing. We've got some nasturtium seeds doing it in the greenhouse right now. Why? Nothing? Really? Dang it. Most seeds are 2 to 5 years. Some of them last so long. The oldest germinated seed as of right now is 20,000 years. It was this little campion plant that was in a squirrel nest under a glacier, and when the glacier receded and they pulled out this little squirrel nest, incredible. The other big ones are lotus seeds and date palm seeds that are thousands, 2,000 to 3,000 years old, in like perfectly locked little baby plant box and just off into time and space. More reasonably 2 to 5, right? Onions, parsnips, and to some degree lettuce, no more than a year. Like, don't even bother. If you're not going to germinate them the next year, those at that point are compost, right? They're not going to do anything. You might as well just throw them away. Do your little germination test, and then, of course, again, label everything. But the paper towel test is great. It seems, like I said, fairly simple, but it's the best way to do it. If you're a seed company, you have rules about this. I want to say most seed companies, unless it's something really odd, like ginseng or something that has really low germination rates, you have to have at least 75% germination to sell it. Otherwise, you have to sort it more and get down to that point. That's why a lot of the bigger seed companies, Seed Savers Exchange, things like that, give away their 2- and 3-year-old seed. Like we sign up for a grant with Seed Savers Exchange every year, and they send us these huge, fabulous packages of 2-year-old seed because the germination has started dropping, they can't legally sell it anymore, so they give it to them for free. Yay! I feel like there's a question.
I don't think I know what the,
Oh,
paper
okay,
towel,
awesome.
whatever.
Yeah. So paper towel, depending on how nice the paper towel is, you can do 1 layer, 2, 3 layers, whatever. And then lay out however many seeds you want. Obviously 10 is a really great number because it's easy to do math with, and so you know your percentages at that point, right? You put them on the paper towel, you spritz them until they're really damp, fold the paper towel over so they're closed, and then put it into your refrigerator. Or you can leave it on your countertop if your house is reasonably cool. And then you'll see the little radical come out. That first little root will come out, and you can tell which ones are viable or not. So
how
if
long
I
do
did,
how long do I wait for that?
depends on the seed. Yeah, so carrots take 14 to 18 days. It's ridiculous how long carrot seeds take to germinate. So you gotta wait 2 weeks, huh?
Hot choy takes like 3 days.
Yeah, radishes, same thing, right? Great plants to do with kids because nobody has to be patient, right? They immediately come up. So it really depends on the plant. You're gonna check that, is like, what is the standard germination time for this? And then you're gonna start checking them about then. And if you don't get any germination, you can maybe wait a little longer. If you still don't get any, then basically you have non-viable seed, right? If I put in 10 and only 3 of them, I'm at 30%. That's not great. Yeah, so.
And you can plant those, by the way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
With the little
Yeah.
thing that comes out, that's how I usually do it when I have when I plant a bunch of stuff and I'm not sure. Just plant the ones that get the little tail on.
And then you don't waste space.
You don't
It's a great way to not
waste
waste
tails, you don't
space,
waste
soil,
time.
pots.
You have
Yeah.
to keep them in a plastic bag or container though in that refrigerator.
It needs to stay damp.
Yeah,
That's ultimately, it's gotta stay damp. Because think of the paper towel as soil, right? You're doing your best reasonable facsimile of soil in a controlled environment.
By cool and not warm.
It's a good question.
Well,
I've actually never questioned that.
Depends on the seed.
Yeah, I guess
The
so.
pepper seed isn't gonna do it in the refrigerator. You have to put that on a heat mat.
And I feel like maybe some of it is like beating the mold and mildew, right? It's like you're trying to get the germination to happen before this paper towel molds on your countertop.
Ah.
It's
Yeah,
like
I can
with
see
a
that
pepper
maybe
seed,
being,
You're not gonna get that with.
my
pepper seed.
yeah.
standard way of starting seeds early is wrap them up in a paper towel, put them in a baggie, put them in my pocket for 2 days.
Nice. So you're like incubating
And then I put them in the
seeds.
ground, yeah, you know, you have the soil.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, yes, I've never questioned that. I just know it is like the place that most seeds I'm gonna bother with is sitting on a shelf in the refrigerator somewhere, and then I pop them back out and check. Yeah. But again, some of that is seed dependent. Like you're saying, pepper seeds hate cold weather, right? Like that's one of the few things we even use heat mats on, even in the greenhouse when we're germinating those, because we want consistent germination, we want everybody up at the same time, and peppers like it hot, 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 right? That's the only thing producing in my garden. Yeah.
The
Yeah,
hotter
yeah.
the pepper, the longer it takes to germinate.
It takes so long. Yeah.
You gotta wait sometimes 3 weeks for a chili pepper to germinate.
So many secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seeds are bizarre and wonderful. They really are. Pollination and seeds, all of plant propagation. That's why I went to grad school for it. I find it's like, it looks like magic from outside, and it's just intricacy disguised as magic. I mean, it is so intricate and so amazing. We haven't even gotten into insect interactions, right? The level of insect interactions to make all this happen is mind-blowing, right? The tricks, plants are always tricking insects, constantly. Like pheromone, shape, whatever, they're always faking them out so they do whatever they want them to do. Yeah, amazing. You also could do it in soil, right? If you don't want paper towels in your fridge with seeds in them, fine. Take 10 of them, put them in a pot, see how many germinate. You just did the same thing, just in traditional methods. Yeah, this is just a little faster and you get to see it right there in front of you. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Oh, seed treatments. Okay, we're finally to the slide I keep saying is the next slide. So, many seeds require some version of this, right? Stratification is when you are, my favorite way to think of it is you are tricking a plant into thinking it went through winter. So if you are a Joe Pye weed, for instance, or you are an echinacea, if you are making seed that's ready to go right now and it drops on the ground right now and germinates, you just set your babies up to freeze to death, right? You cannot have them germinate right now. So there are built-in mechanisms into these seeds, hormonally and physiologically speaking, that mean they have to go through a cold, wet period before they will germinate. Echinacea and milkweed are the most notorious for this. If I were to take this milkweed right now, even into my greenhouse in like nice, perfect conditions, I would get abysmal germination rates because it has not been stratified. This milkweed thinks that it is a bad idea to germinate right now, and it is, right? So I have to convince it that it has been through winter. So you need to put it into a fridge or somewhere that feels like winter and also have it wet. Seed storage is dry cold, stratification is wet cold. Echinacea, same thing. If you took this echinacea and went ahead and planted these seeds, again, terrible germination rates. Any of the delphiniums are like this too. If you do not stratify those kinds of things, you are going to have such disappointing germination rates. And it's not your fault. It is a built-in physiological mechanism to save them from being frozen in the wintertime because they are a plant that is in a temperate climate, right? Like tropical plants don't do it because why would they need to, right? All of that requires some effort. Who here has ever been here for the winter sowing talk? To some extent, what you are doing is doing that, but not in a baggie in your fridge. So somebody is basically stratifying seeds in au naturel, right? You can do this with nature. You can put seeds into pots. You can put seeds into milk jugs, and then you just leave them outside, and you're letting nature stratify them for you. If you want some control over it, you can absolutely do it in a baggie. My favorite way is sand, because I just find sand easy to work with on the back end again. So if I've got these T90 Joe Pye wheat seeds, I will take off the ones I can. I'll mix them in with some sand, get it damp, and then I will write on the baggie the date that they can come out of the fridge, because I don't want to do math later. So it'll say on there, whenever, February 3rd. That's the day I can take this bag of seed out, and then I take that sand and I do a surface sow across whatever substrate or pot I want them in, and off they go. And then I put them in a greenhouse or something, because now they think I've given them springtime. Yeah.
So how did you know February 3rd? Like, how did you come up with that date?
So some of that's plant dependent, right? So again, milkweed and echinacea in particular are ones where like they want 2 months, right? From the date I put them in, they want 2 months of winter. If you do it less than that, and there are so many write-ups about this, okay. I do not hold all of them in my head, right? And then there's some that you can give them like a week or two. And as long as you give them any sort of trick, they're like, okay, fine, here we go, let's do this, right? Some of them are need way more. So look that up, right? If you decide to pick a seed, pick that one, look up its specs, and then do that. Yeah, Rob.
Are there any vegetables you have to stratify?
More likely scarify.
Okay.
Veggies are way more likely to need scarification.
Okay.
I bet there are some, I bet rhubarb or any of those plants that are from like the Nordic countries. Because again, especially if they like evolved there, they're doing the same thing. It's like, I'm gonna have to make it through winter, so I can't germinate. But no, not many, because a lot of veggies are annuals too. So it's like,
Yeah,
they're
that's
gonna
true.
jump right into it. That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
I
never
can't
heard
think
of it.
of any.
I've
Anybody?
never done it.
I know I'm the one giving the talk, but yeah. So scarifying is a whole different thing. Scarification is when you need in some way to either soften or actively break the seed coat, right? So the most basic way is soak in water, right? I feel like most of us have seen this on a potential, like nasturtiums, beets, chard, sweet peas, any of those, it'll say on the package, improved germination with 24-hour soak. Technically, what you are doing is scarifying it, right? The word sounds a little more aggressive, but water is an incredible, breaks things down. It's like the ultimate dissolver, as gentle as it seems. And so you are at bare minimum softening the seed coat so that that teeny little baby radical can bust through the seed coat and get out of there, right? That is part of it, and so that water can get in. Some seeds require way more aggressive scarification. Sandpaper is a great way. If you have one that's not too heavy, you put sandpaper down and then you just rub the seeds across it. You can use a little file. I've heard of people using rock tumblers. And so if it's big enough seed, you can put it in with a rock tumbler, roll it around. When I was in grad school, I got to play with sulfuric acid, which is mimicking a stomach, right? So like some seeds need to be eaten by a creature. and then they're gonna germinate. Some plants need fire, like longleaf pines are real famous for this. If you do not set longleaf pine seeds on fire, never, just nothing, right? They require this thing because they come from an environment that only when the fire blows through is stuff gone enough for them to decide to germinate. So all of these tricks have been built into the little baby plant's box, so it only opens at the most ideal time, right? And so you are trying to trick seeds into thinking now is the ideal time. And then you give them the ideal time. Yeah. So scarification is basically anything, again, that softens or breaks the seed coat. You can do that in whatever way feels most reasonable to you. Yeah. Okay, any questions about this before we keep going? I think we're pretty close. Oh yeah, okay, we are. So down to resources. Again, I don't even hold all these in my head. It is just too much to remember every single seed's needs, when, where, how. There's a few that are in my head just because I've done them enough that, yeah, I know them. There are some amazing books out there. Seed Savers Exchange is an incredible organization. If you are not already familiar with them, you should look into them. They do sell seeds like any other seed company, but a huge part of what they do is basically just like an edible and flowering plant library, right? They are a plant museum. They are basically maintaining types of plants and keeping them true to type, save lots of seeds, they sell it. This is a cool book that came out just now. This one by Susan Ashworth has been the seed saving book for the longest time. I just noticed actually that we have the previous edition. I'm pretty sure there's an even newer one than the one I have too. So this Seed to Seed, this is really, I mean, no pictures, just each individual plant and a write-up of all the stuff we just talked about. It's gonna say, Joe Pieweed, harvest seed when, treat seed as such, germinate as such, prefers this, do this. So this is a really straightforward encyclopedic description of what seeds want to be saved and to be germinated. Separation distances, all of that stuff we talked about is broken down into individual plants and seeds in this particular book. I can't say as much about these two because I don't actually own them. I checked this one out from the library and looked at it a little bit, but I know some people that I've talked to say they do like this one as well. These two that I have are very specific to weird natives, right? So if you decide to get into natives, I'm not gonna suggest you do that right off the cuff, right? These are not easy. These are, again, the real weird ones that like need a specific pollinator and who knows if it actually pollinated. They're only gonna make like 2 seeds anyway, and oh my gosh, very challenging, right? But if you ever get into it, these are my 2 favorite like weird natives books in terms of what they're gonna need for seed germination in particular. Not quite the same as propagating. Obviously propagating, you can do cuttings and all kinds of things, but actual seed starting is really those. And I think I've talked about everything on my little table here. Oh, the Buckeyes, what I was trying to remember with this, somebody just brought us these from their house, and as weird as it seems, Buckeye seeds, if you let them dry out completely, they are really hard to get to germinate. It's like you have to plant them almost right away, because if they dry out, they don't like that. Same with pawpaw seeds. Anybody decides to get into pawpaws, which, for what it's worth, pawpaws always cross out. Like if you start pawpaw seeds, you're always gonna get something weird. Same with apples, right? It's why all apples are grafted, because if you start seeds from an apple, it always outcrosses. Like it's always gonna be something weird. But if you let pawpaws or these dry out completely, they'll just never really germinate all that well. Another famous one for that in our area is ginseng. If ginseng dries out completely, good luck, right? You gotta stratify it for like 2 years or something ridiculous like that, and remember that it's in the fridge somewhere. No way, my ADD can't handle that. Okay, I think that's everything on my table. Any questions before everybody stands up and can come look at all the stuff I got? Yeah.
Ground cherries. I got some plants here in the spring.
Mhm.
Loved them.
Yeah.
So I have a bunch of the fruit. Do I
Treat them
let it-
just like a tomato.
Okay, that's what I was gonna
Yeah,
ask you.
treat them
Okay.
just like a tomato.
Okay.
So you're gonna want them to develop as long as they possibly can on the plant. They're gonna have that pretty little coating is gonna have dried up, and they're gonna be even more golden, almost look like they're ready to get soft and gooey.
Okay.
And then you could put them into water just like a tomato, let them ferment a tiny bit, and then you're gonna smush them through a sieve,
Okay.
whatever, to get all the goo off, and then
Okay.
dry them down.
All right, perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, ground cherries are delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Okay, anybody else? Awesome. Okay, I'm happy to answer any questions about, again, anything I got on my table. Thanks, everybody.